Professor Maxine Linton, and I'm the Dean for Research and Enterprise, and it's my absolute privilege to welcome you to Birmingham City University this evening for one of our series of inaugural lectures. Inaugurals are really special events. They're an opportunity for someone at the pinnacle of their academic, and in this case, clinical career, to share with friends, families, colleagues, what they've been doing, how they've got where they are, and what their latest ideas are. They're always exciting, they're always interesting, and I'm sure we will all learn a lot this evening. So I'm going to hand over in a moment to our esteemed colleague, Professor Waseem Hanif, who's going to give us a little bit more information about our inaugural professor. So, Professor Hanif.
I hope I don't need a mic. You can hear me. Thank you very much, Maxine, and welcome you all. It's lovely to see so many faces, some familiar and some very eminent people, for this very important inaugural lecture by our esteemed and valued colleague, as well as a good friend, Professor Rishi Singhal. It's my honor and privilege to give an introduction to his role and his achievements and his chair at the Birmingham City University. We at the BCU, as Maxine said, have always tried to get people of eminence on and honor them with a kind of a visiting professorship, not only to enable them to progress in their careers, but also contribute to the university and general things around education and research. Now, Rishi, as most of us know, is an internationally renowned bariatric and upper gastrointestinal surgeon. He's worked for more than 2 decades, and he's got expertise in minimal bariatric surgery. I don't know what that is. I just give drugs. And he's also been in the forefront of surgical innovation and patient care. Rishi completed his undergraduation from Delhi University, and then he came to the UK. He's got a fellowship from both the Royal Colleges of Surgeons in England and Edinburgh, and he's got proficiency in advanced laparoscopic and robotic surgery. He has done over 4,000 bariatric procedures. I don't know how you find time to do that. And he's also an expert on revisional procedures. Having worked with him in Tier 3 service at UHB, I can vouch for his expertise, and he's one of those people we always value opinion on complicated cases. And he's also been instrumental in establishing global benchmark in revisional bariatric surgery. Not only is he a brilliant clinician, but he's also an active educator, researcher, and innovator, having published nearly 150 peer-reviewed articles and book chapters. He's also the medical director of Healthier Weight, and he leads a dedicated multidisciplinary team establishing in all aspects of bariatric surgery, including comprehensive weight loss programs. He's also looking at him, he's also very media savvy. He's been on BBC Channel 4 documentaries, and I think somebody's filming today, so it may end up in Bollywood, so make sure you look good. So Rishi, on behalf of the Birmingham City University, in recognition of your contribution to bariatric surgery and surgical education, we are delighted to offer you the inaugural lecture for the visiting professor of bariatric surgery at Birmingham University. So the stage is yours.
Thank you all for being here. Good evening. Firstly, I want to thank you for taking time out this evening to come and join me in this inaugural lecture. It means a lot to me. When I was first asked to give this inaugural lecture, I wasn't sure what I was supposed to say. And then I got the simplest advice. And that advice was, it is your day. So why don't you talk about something that is important to you? So I'm exactly going to do that today. I'm going to talk about my journey, how I got here, the people who helped me along the way, the lessons I learned, and sometimes the hard way, and a few thoughts about where our field could end up in the next 10 to 20 years. In many ways, standing here is like standing in front of a mirror. It makes you realize how much of your journey is built by others, your mentors, your colleagues, your friends, and your family. So I was born in Ashton under Lyne, where my father was working as a surgeon and my mother was working as a histopathologist. When I was 1 year old, my parents moved back to India, and that is where I had my primary education. My primary education was in a mixture of Catholic schools and public schools. Like Wasim said, I did my medicine at med school in Delhi. Now, I get this question asked of me a lot of times, why did I choose surgery? Why did I become a surgeon? And that is the question I asked myself as well when I was preparing for this lecture. For those of you who haven't guessed, that's my father in this picture, no doubt giving me advice. I can tell you that I was in theaters for the first time when I was 14. And I was scrubbed in theaters for the first time when I was around 16 or 17. So I think surgery became a part of me. I didn't choose surgery. It was a part of me. So after finishing med school in India, I came over to the UK and I landed at Heartlands Hospital. A lot of you have been to Heartlands Hospital or have worked there. And you know, Heartlands Hospital used to be an old chest hospital, a TB hospital. And the wards used to look like this in the past, but I think some of the wards still do look like this. So I landed at Heartlands Hospital. But you know, for someone to be successful, you need somebody to trust in him, somebody to believe in him. And that person was Charlie Hendrixie. When I first came to Heartlands, I wanted a clinical attachment in surgery. And Charlie saw something in me, which I guess nobody saw. And I think he saw that I was very mischievous. But he appointed me to do the clinical attachment at Heartlands. And in a couple of weeks, I started understanding how the NHS worked. And I got my next job, which was in Scunthorpe for my sins for 6 months. And I applied back to Heartlands for the surgical rotation there. For those of you who may not remember, Heartlands rotation was a very coveted rotation. It was one of the best rotations in the country. And once again, Charlie was the interviewer there. And for the second time, he made the same mistake. He saw something in me, and he appointed me to do the surgical rotation at Heartlands. Now, Heartlands rotation rotated through many specialties: orthopedics, vascular, ENT, thoracics, urology, general surgery, upper GI surgery, critical care. So it was good in some ways, very good in some ways. It allowed the trainee to know the hospital, but more importantly, it allowed the hospital and the consultants in the hospital to know the trainee very well. And it was here that I was first exposed to bariatric surgery. When I saw my first sight of seeing a 250 kg patient having surgery, surrounded by larger-than-life surgeons, with 2 anesthetists at the head end, a lot of scrub nurses, it's a vision that I cannot forget. And that is when I started knowing that I probably want to do bariatric surgery. And the person who let me in, who allowed me to dream about bariatric surgery was Paul Super. So he just didn't let me assist him in theaters. He guided me. He told me, yes, it is possible that you could become a bariatric surgeon someday. He shaped my mindset. He gave me the first chance. And I think that made all the difference. After finishing my rotation at Heartlands, with his support and the support of all the consultants at Heartlands, I got a surgical rotation in surgery, the SPR rotation in Midlands. Now again, as a lot of us know, that SPR rotations used to be 6 years those days. And if you wanted a consultant job, you had to do an MD or a PhD. So that was 8 years decided for me. So the first 2 or 3 years, I rotated through various hospitals, and then I did my research. My research was in metabolomics. And those of you here do not understand metabolomics, don't worry. I still don't understand it very well. But it was Chris, who's here today, who was my lab supervisor, He's the one who tried to teach me about metabolomics, tried to make sure that I knew enough to at least pass my viva. But instead of learning metabolomics, I learned how to work in teams instead. I learned how to not just think scientifically, but apply it to clinical surgery. It improved my ability to critically appraise literature and shifted my mindset from not just treating to truly understanding. After finishing your research, the next few years are very crucial for any surgeon. Those are the years that you start learning the real craft, the specialty that you want to do. During these last few years, the formative years, I worked at the QE for 2 years in the upper GI unit, 6 months at the liver unit, a year in the bariatric unit at Heartlands, and 3 months of a fellowship in Taunton. And it is during this time that I worked with some of the greatest surgeons in the country and some of the best upper GI surgeons that I've ever come across. And it reminds me of what Isaac Newton said, that if I've seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. And it is 3 mentors that I would like to talk to you about now. I've been very fortunate to have had 3 mentors who shaped each a different part of my journey. Professor Alderson, who was my supervisor during my MD, my mentor, he taught me how to think. He taught me how to approach problems logically, how to plan carefully, and how to keep asking questions, even when the easy answers seemed obvious. And then it was Paul Super who taught me how to do it, how to operate safely, skillfully, and consistently. He showed me the real meaning of technical excellence in surgery. But we all know as surgeons that complications are going to happen. So it was Martin Richardson who taught me perhaps the hardest lesson in surgery, what to do when things go wrong. Because no matter how good you are, complications will happen. And what defines you is how calmly, how honestly, and how responsibly you deal with these complications. So each of them gave me something different. Together, they gave me the foundation that I'm standing on today. Finally, I was appointed as a consultant in 2013. I thought my troubles were over, my hard work was over, everything is going to be plain sailing, I'm going to be the big boss at Heartlands, and I'll know everything. Well, how wrong was I? I became a consultant, I thought I was ready. I obviously thought I had all the answers. But then reality started sinking in within a few months. There were many unknowns. In the past, when I used to operate, it would be Martin or Paul who would take my complications and I would get away scot-free, no liability at all. But now I had to not just take into account my own complications, but the complications of the registrars and the SHOs who were operating without me even being there. So the fear of having those complications. And when I had them, which I of course did, having the guilt of having those complications. And I did ask for a lot of help, but sometimes you did not know when you wanted to ask for help. Heartlands was a great place. It's the best place I could have ever worked. And if I had to do it all over again, I'll probably still go to that old hospital, Heartlands, and work there. It didn't let me feel isolated, but you do feel isolated as a new consultant sometimes. And it takes time to start saying that, actually, I don't know. But as you know, maturity is knowing your limits. And over time, confidence replaces ego. And now I teach what I wish I had known then. There's a famous African proverb that it takes an entire village to raise a child. And if you haven't guessed who that child is, I think that child was me. And if I was to pick one photograph in my career that means a lot, it would be this photograph. So on my right is Marcos Daskalakis. Marcos is here today. He's traveled all the way from Greece. Marcos was a friend, a colleague, a mentor, and somebody whom I still call when there are complications that I don't want to discuss with anybody else, and I just want him to know and give me an answer before anybody finds out. So Marcos is that person. And Arab, who was my registrar there, who's on the left, and he's one of our registrar's fellows now, he's on my left. But the most important thing about this photograph is the date, the 27th of March, 2020. That was the day that Heartlands was going into lockdown. I had to do a splenectomy in a patient who was immunocompromised, and there were no beds in the hospital. No beds, no ITU beds. Lucy was the consultant on call for ITU. I went to her that, Lucy, I want to do this case. Yeah, Rishi, you can do it, but as long as you don't have a complication, and as long as you don't bring this patient to ITU. So when the entire country is going into lockdown, the two surgeons who came and stood by me were Marcos and Arab. And they made this operation possible. Operation was carried out successfully. Ellen, who joined us for a bit of the operation, she took this photograph. And this photograph more or less sums my entire journey. That I stood on the shoulders of giants. I had people supporting me all the time, and which is why I'm here where I am. But I did not do it alone. This photograph was taken in Greece at Marcos's son's christening. So to my left is Spiros, who used to be a registrar, then a fellow, then a colleague consultant who's here today, who's traveled from Greece. Then it's Mr. Super. And to the left of me is Vas Karalampakis. Vas used to be a registrar, our fellow, and then a colleague consultant. And together, Vas and Spiros assisted me in countless operations. They were a second pair of eyes. When I was looking at the goal, they were looking at whether, if anything, could go wrong. So they were watching my back even when I wasn't. Complex cases don't just test your skill, they test your nerve. There were colleagues and juniors who stood by me, calm, focused, and present. And the importance of the surgical assistants is not just in theaters. They offer you a light moment in between cases when you're stressed. Like Arab, I think, is trying to crack a joke with me because I was stressed in between operations and giving me that light moment so that I could carry on. Your registrars also have a drink with you sometimes to hear your ideas, no matter how rubbish they are, to help you think them through. Like Muhammad at an airport, trying to listen to all my ideas, trying to agree to them. I'm sure he didn't believe any of them. But these registrars, these assistants don't just assist you in surgery. They assist you in life. They are a part of your career. And their quiet confidence helped me build mine. But I've become a consultant now. But you still need mentors. I had my juniors supporting me. I had my colleagues supporting me, but you still needed mentors. Being a consultant, again, doesn't mean that you have all the answers. Titles don't replace judgment. And my best mentors didn't give me answers, they gave me clarity. And I would like to talk about 3 other mentors here. The first one, a lot of you know and want to unknow, is Raghu. The Raghu always spoke to me about blue ocean strategy. And I never understood till late what he really means by it. He taught me market differentiation. He said, Rishi, yes, you do good bariatric surgery, but what you have to learn is to do something that differentiates you from the market. He pushed me to do more and more revisional surgery, to do cases that nobody else was prepared to do, to operate at the extremes of BMI, to operate in patients who have paraplegia, who have multiple sclerosis, complex cases, so that I could differentiate myself from the market. But then it was Sharad Karandikar who helped me think outside surgery. How should I develop? What else I need to do? How do I propel my career forward? How do I do the things that I'm doing here and multiply them at other places? And Sharad always advised me in my appraisal that you have to do an MBA. And Sharad, I haven't still done an MBA. I will do it at some point. But Sharad was instrumental in getting me to think outside the box. And Martin, I mean, I was not going to say this about Martin, but I think I should. Martin allowed me to, he did a lot. He saved me from a lot of surgical complications. When the complications happened as a consultant, repeatedly, he would come, help, and teach me how to avoid those complications from happening. But that's not it. He wanted me to be much more than just a surgeon. He wanted me to be a professor of surgery. He wanted a professor of surgery within the department at Heartlands. And he always kept on telling me, Rishi, don't be in a rush. You're on the right track. When the time is right, you will know. And that is when you should go for it. So his support throughout this time was very, very important. But it is not just about my surgical assistants and my colleagues and my mentors. It's about the team. It's about the nurses. It's about my theatre sisters who anticipated what I needed before I even asked for it. It is about the theatre sisters who offered me a cup of coffee when I was too tired to make one for myself. It was about the theatre sisters who told me that you are getting stroppy, you need a break, you are hungry, de-scrub, go and eat something, come back and you'll be less stroppy then. And it was about the theatre nurses who told me that this is an infected case, you need to wear proper PPEs now, otherwise I will not let you into theatres, to make sure that I was safe. But it was just not about the nurses either. It was about the anaesthetists. The anaesthetists who stayed calm when I wasn't. On the left, we have Banki, who's here. Raghu, unfortunately, everybody knows. And to the left, we have Sajid, who couldn't be here. And together, we have performed over 4,000 bariatric procedures. They started knowing me, and I started knowing them very well. They knew that if I was talking, shouting in the middle of an operation, everything was absolutely perfect. But they knew it was when I was quiet that there's a problem. They knew if I'm not saying anything, there is something happening. And that is when they would be even more alert about the operation. So it is without their support, I couldn't have done all the cases that I've done and continue to do. But it is not just about them either. It's about the porters, the ODPs, the runners. The rhythm of the theatre depends on them all. When people talk about surgical success, they often focus on the surgeon, the one who's holding the scalpel. But in reality, every safe operation, every smooth day, every good outcome is built on the team you see here. They are the reason things run, the reason I can focus, the reason I kept on going on the hard days. This wasn't a team I worked with. This was a team that had my back even when I didn't ask them to. So what else besides surgery? Well, you all know that my heart belongs to surgery, but my mind has always leaned towards research. Research gave me the ability to ask why, not just how. It allowed me to contribute to beyond the patient in front of me, to improve the care for people I'll never meet. And this quote from Atul Gawande, who is a very famous surgeon in the US, a philosopher, he said, "If I get hit by a bus tomorrow, my patients will not even be postponed. Another surgeon would step in and take over." The reason to do research and writing is that it at least makes me feel not entirely replaceable. The power of research, it's how we leave something behind. During the last 25 years, I've done a lot of research. I published over 150 papers. Many of them did not change anything. Some of them did. One of those works was during the COVID times when we did the Geneva study. During COVID times, there was a lot of concentration on emergency general surgery, how to do it safely. But nobody was really thinking about how to do safe bariatric surgery. Now, why is it important to do safe bariatric surgery? We know obesity exposed you to a higher risk of complications after COVID. And there was no data on how safely we can do bariatric surgery during this time. So we conducted the Geneva study across 182 centers, across 42 countries in the world, and collected data on 10,000 patients, and established that bariatric surgery can be done using these protocols safely during the COVID times. We followed that on by doing the Onward study, which looked at patients with advanced end organ disease, hepatic failure, renal failure, and cardiac failure, and how to do surgery in those patients during the COVID times. But it was not just about research either. Over the last 10 years, I've worked very closely with Healthy Weight. I was introduced to Healthy Weight by Paul Super, and I became their medical director in 2015. Now, that was very scary, to be a medical director of an organization that early in your career. And Raghu was the person who mentored me on the job. So he agreed to be an honorary member of the governance board so that he could teach me how to be a medical director whilst I was learning to be a surgeon. But at Healthier Weight, I got to work with some of the best management minds, some of the best nurses that I've ever worked with. At Healthy Weight, I learned what are lean, efficient care pathways, how to get high quality outcomes using very focused resources, how to work with minimal or no bureaucracy at all, with a patient-first mindset, and get outcomes, not just do the admin part. So Healthy Weight rubbed off on me, but I rubbed off on Healthy Weight as well. I made Healthier Weight into an academic organization. They started collating their data, auditing their data, and we published Healthier Weight data. We became the first private bariatric organization in the country, and I think the only organization still that regularly audits and publishes their data for peer review. From Healthier Weight, I got more inspired. I went on to set up the obesity clinics in India. India, as you know, has the highest population in the world and, of course, the highest number of type 2 diabetics in the world. There's already a lot of bariatric surgery in India, but that was concentrated in tier 1 cities. So I set up a dual model bariatric platform where we offer bariatric surgery to patients from tier 1, and we use those resources to provide surgery to those who cannot afford. And I decided to focus obesity clinics on NAFLD. We know non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is a predictor of complications after obesity. On infertility, which is a growing problem, birth rates are dropping, and obesity has a huge role to play there, and adolescent obesity. But besides working with all these things, one of my missions has been eliminating stigma around obesity. We know that obesity is a very stigmatizing condition. People who have bariatric surgery many of them don't tell anybody they've had bariatric surgery. Patients won't even tell their partners sometimes they've had bariatric surgery. There are so many people who are taking Mounjaro, Wegovy, Ozempic, but they don't tell anybody that they're taking these things. And what I've tried doing through BBC, through Channel 4, and Paddy is here who was supporting me through all of these ventures to shed the stigma around obesity, but there's still a lot of stigma. And I tried getting rid of stigma by teaching, by educating my juniors, by educating my colleagues, to get rid of this stigma somehow. And if we could get rid of that stigma, maybe we could tackle the third problem of unsafe medical tourism, for which Paddy and I have done a lot of work. Last year, 26 Brits died in Turkey after having bariatric surgery, in comparison to none in the UK. So we have to try, and I've been trying to get this message across, that there's unsafe medical tourism. But no surgical journey is complete unless you work with industry and innovate. All of us whinge in theaters that this stapler is rubbish, that this energy device just bleeds, that this clipper is not clipping, this trocar is leaping, everything is wrong. But we refuse to work with industry. We refuse to innovate. We keep on complaining about it. We have to work with industry so that we can develop better instruments, so that we have better instruments for the next generation of surgeons. But more importantly, it allows us to promote homegrown products. Industry that is based in the UK, we allow them to grow. We get their products to the front line, and we start reducing the carbon impact of transporting these devices from all over the world. But I think we should talk a bit about the future as well, because I think some bariatric surgeons here may be worried about the future. What does the future hold? I think obesity will continue to rise, especially and worryingly in the younger populations. The GLP-1 medications, I don't think they're going to be the silver bullet that we thought. More and more medications are coming out, but they have their own complications like blindness, pancreatitis, medullary carcinoma thyroid. And in the future, techniques such as gene editing or CRISPR technology may come in for correction of obesity-linked polymorphism. But what's around the corner? I think viral vectors are around the corner. In COVID vaccines, we tried doing this, and I think it may be possible to eventually correct these genetic polymorphisms using viral vectors, or fecal transplantation, which I think is very, very close. So soon, you may be able to go to Harborne High Street and buy your latest or the best from whoever you want. And there's been a lot of research about it already. They did research in rats who had a Roux-en-Y gastric bypass. And they took their feces, distilled them, and fed them to obese rats who had a gene knocked out, they lost weight. So it's possible, it will be done, and I think we are getting there. So in the next 10 years, I think we will redefine obesity, not just as being excess weight, but a neurohormonal and epigenetic condition. And those of us who are worried, I don't think the future will eliminate bariatric surgery. It will change when, why, and how we intervene. But there's one person who's not in the theater with me, who doesn't attend MDTs, and has nothing to do with research or publications. But without her, none of this would have happened. She gave me stability so I could chase ambition. She held the home together through the chaos of training, late nights, and the quiet stress that comes with the job. Whenever things got difficult, she never said stop. She said, "You go and conquer, I've got this." Her strength made my journey possible. Quietly, constantly, she built the foundation I've stood on all these years. She's not just a part of the story, she's the reason the story was written in the first place. Finally, I stand here today, not because of my own strength alone, but because of the mentors who guided me, the colleagues who supported me, the friends who believed in me, and the family who stood behind me. So this is not just my achievement, it is ours. Thank you.